Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Resiliency Podcast, aka DR in a Bar. This is episode 18, and this is a podcast about retention. Now, retention is, to me, a really difficult topic because it has the tendency to be extremely boring. I'm not saying retention's not important, and in fact, Eddie and I talked a lot about this topic before we recorded it, and he convinced me that we needed to do this, and that's literally why I went ahead and edited this and made this available to you, our listeners, today. But I have to tell you, I'm not 100% in agreement that this is a great podcast. I will say this, Eddie's on point, and, you know, the beer stuff and the food stuff is actually really good. I mean, we went to a great place, but nevertheless, like I said, I don't love this one. I think it will be a long time before we talk about retention again. I'm interested to hear your thoughts. So you can find me on Twitter at GetPresiliency, and you can find us on LinkedIn. The URLs are in the show notes. And without further ado, I present to you retention on the Resiliency Podcast. Take it away, Anna the Prize Girl.
It's time for the Resiliency Podcast, aka DR in a Bar. Now, without further ado, here are your heart-stomping, pants-dropping, history-making, earthquaking, love-making, and booty-shaking hosts, Vince Vaughn and Eddie Perez.
All right, thank you, Anna the Prize Girl. Welcome again to another episode, the 18th episode of the Resiliency Podcast, aka DR in a Bar. My name is Vince Vaughn. As always, is the legendary, my hetero life mate, Eddie Perez. Say hello, Eddie.
Hello, world.
Where are we at, Eddie?
Well, we're at Rock and Run, which is in Liberty, and I think this is actually the home base of our first ever episode that was lost.
Go ahead, tell that story.
Well, Vince, in his infinite wisdom, didn't actually save the file. He didn't actually create a backup.
I didn't have a backup.
That sad?
I didn't have two copies, let alone. I didn't have one copy, let alone three copies.
Yeah. See, here's the deal: always validate your backups. We keep talking about that, and we're sorry that Vince did not follow that strategy. But going forward, he learned.
I did learn. I actually have three copies of every podcast that I record. So yeah, I totally screwed that up. But we're back. We're here again. It's called the Rock and Run Brewery. They brew their own beers here, but they also have a lot of other beers here too. I'm going to have a beer out of Springfield, Missouri, actually today. What are you having?
For food, as you know, I am a food concierge. I keep everything.
You're
I eat
a food
everything.
Concierge.
That's probably the wrong word. What do you say? Connoisseur.
Let's.
We're gonna edit that. I am a food connoisseur. Connoisseur.
No, fuck that. You're a concierge now.
I'm a concierge. I'm a food concierge. Actually, you know what? Don't edit that shit. All right. So what I'm actually gonna do is try the pig. Actually, no, the white pizza.
White pizza.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Well, first off, it's not the brown pizza, but it looks brown. But
okay.
Whatever.
All right.
It has chicken, spinach, so my mom will like that.
Okay.
Bacon, mozzarella, and homemade white sauce. Now, when someone says white sauce, I don't know what to take it for.
Oh my god. Oh my god. I'm not having any of that pizza for sure.
All right, I want to try this bad boy out. Actually, they said this is the signature item on their menu, so we'll try it out.
Very good.
That is actually interesting. The weird thing about it is it tastes like everything that's on that menu.
Yeah.
But it has almost like a garlicky aftertaste because it looks like they put a little bit of garlic, a little bit of seasoning on the bottom. It actually does help the pizza come out really, really well.
Yeah.
I would actually order this for my family. I think they would actually eat it having all that stuff on there.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think they would take out a lot. They might look at the spinach and say, "What is that?" Well, but if it was cut up smaller, they would probably just eat it because it actually tastes really good.
I would say this: the look of that pizza is awesome.
Oh yeah, it's a thin crust. It's done in their what is it? They do it in the burner, right? In the stone.
Yeah.
So I think it's I'd have to say for pizza because I've had a lot of pizza around the area. I think in our line of work we eat pizza all the time.
All the time.
I mean, you have the Minskys, you have Northern. I mean, there's old Northern Lights. You have all these, even the old school Domino's or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But even for local, this is probably, I'd have to say, probably one of the top 2 pizzas I've had
Wow.
in the region. It's actually this particular pizza. Not saying that all their pizzas are like this.
I get it.
But this particular pizza, I'd give it because it is pizza. It's not the greatest thing that I like, but I do like pizza.
Yeah.
I'd say an 8.93.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
I'd say that you're going to have that after you have your beer, and you're going to be happy with it.
awesome. Very cool.
Yeah.
That's impressive. Very good. So I'm having the Mother's Mr. Pumpkins. I had the Stockyard Stocktoberfest last time, which I absolutely loved, and I got to tell you, I'm on a run of beers I love. When we started this podcast, I did a lot of beers that I absolutely hated. I was like, am I going to find a beer I actually like? And now I've been on a run that I love the beers that I've been having,
And you just ruined it. Watch.
maybe not.
No,
Maybe
you've
not.
ruined it. I'm
Maybe
already
not.
looking at that beer.
No, I see. I love pumpkin beer. I love pumpkin beer. And Mother's is a brewery out of Springfield, Missouri, and I love that. I love those beers. I anticipate loving this beer actually, but we'll see. So here we go, the Mother's Mr. Pumpkin out of Springfield, Missouri, and I love it. Absolutely love this beer. What I love about a pumpkin beer is when it's not too sour, when it's just a beer that has a pumpkin flavor to it, and it doesn't like overwhelm you with the pumpkin. That's this beer. I mean, you can absolutely taste the pumpkin, and it tastes delicious, by the way. And there's no real aftertaste to this beer, which is really rare for a pumpkin beer.
Do you want aftertaste in a pumpkin beer, though?
I don't.
You don't?
Fuck no. Absolutely not, man. I'm not a big fan of aftertaste. I like the during taste. The aftertaste I can do without.
Oh, interesting.
So, but I really do like this beer. What am I going to give this beer?
And what I want to make sure you understand is that you need to give it a rating based on pumpkin beers. I think we need to change that up for a little bit because you're comparing sometimes our scale is it a pale, is it a lager, is it whatever. I think as a pumpkin beer.
No, I disagree because I would have this beer regardless of the season.
Well, it is only out during a single season.
I know,
though.
but I'm telling you, I would. I mean, if
You're
they
telling me
made
that
this
you'd
beer-
have that in fall.
absolutely
You'd have that in winter.
in winter, spring, and summer.
Yeah.
I would absolutely have this beer, and it's going to be a high rating. I'm going to say 8.675.
That's good.
It is good. I do love this beer. You need to try the Mother's Mr. Pumpkin because it's awesome. I love this beer. Very good.
You know what's really interesting is that when you have places like this, do you ever feel like they actually go through and say, okay, everyone hates this beer, let's remove it? Or do you think that a lot of times they just have that one beer they know that everyone is just gonna just not like?
Well, here's the thing. They've got probably 100 beers here.
Yeah.
And all of them are on draft. I mean, when you think about the investment they have to make ahead of time to have all these kegs around of all this beer, it's probably pretty sizable. And I'm really surprised that like a local small town brewery that actually brews their own beers actually has so many beers that they don't brew. So it's pretty interesting. I personally, I don't understand how breweries like this, like if I tried to do this, I'm sure it would fail miserably.
No, you would say Vince Vaughn owns this, and everybody would go. They would go the first time, they'd be disappointed, and then is Vince Vaughn here? You just say, no, he's not here today.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
keep going with it. Maybe you'll see him.
Yeah, which is the reaction I get every time I introduce myself. Let's talk about retention.
Yeah, it's something I actually have always struggled with over the course of time.
So when you say struggle, what's my retention for on-site versus off-site? Because here's my problem with retention. My problem with retention is that it's usually IT has no input. It's like they retain their data based on the way we used to retain data years ago.
On paper.
It's like there's no thought to it. We just do this.
But the hard part of retention is people, right? It's that the communication that happens between the business and IT. They don't tell me, they say, well, how do you want to keep it? Well, let's keep it forever. and then they say, okay, you want to keep it forever? Here's how much it cost. And it never ends. And they go, wait a minute, no. And then they'll go in, and a lot of times they'll do 7 years. You hear the 7-year retention rule.
Yep.
And that's only for certain things like financial stuff like that. If you're in the healthcare industry, you have to keep the actual code 2 years past end of life of a particular device that's in the field.
Yep.
So if you're a hospital, you have the system. Even if you use it for 20 years, that company needs to keep that code for that system 2 years past the end of the system being used.
Right.
So that takes a lot of retention there as well. But, is that an archive, right? Is that when we talk about retention, we want to really talk about backup retention, not an archive retention. For us, having an archive discussion is something we probably want to talk about in a future episode, but they do kind of work together. Backups are for DR purposes only. And that's the way I believe in it. Now, others might disagree. I'd ask a customer, if you keep your data for 7 years, is that a retention? Is that an archive? And they'll say yes, and I go, no, it's not. Right? An archive is a single version of a file, usually a true archive. You're not having, you don't have 5, national archives, right? There's a reason why you have a single point for a lot of that stuff. So what we want to always make sure is that we want to design this for data recoverability for 99% of the data.
And that's the difference in philosophy, is that an archive is just to have it. It's not for recoverability.
No, and it's for 100% of the data, right? So that's one of the differences, is that an archive should be for 100%, a backup should be for 99%. Right? Mm-hmm. Let's say theoretically, oh my gosh, you can't find an email that you have, right? You would go to what? The archive server, because that's supposed to have 100% of all emails, as an example. Mm-hmm. So this is something that I want to make sure that our listeners start thinking about. I've done some testing internally, between 0 and 30 days is 93% recoveries happen. After that, it's about 6%.
Yeah, from 31 to 60.
Yeah, about 31 to 60, and then it drops down. It like falls off a cliff. It's like, boom. It's not, all right, it goes down little by little. It is,
it's a cliff.
It is a cliff. It's kind of like some people's water bill. It goes up and down pretty dang quickly.
Yeah.
Usually up, really. But, one thing that we want to make sure is how long are you going to keep this data? But not just how long you need to keep it, but how many recover points of retention do you want to have in between? Do you want to have minute retention, hourly retention, and how long do you want to keep those? Right? Within our resiliency that we've done, we give actually a guideline. What we say on there is not fits everybody. It's more of you have to start somewhere, because we've learned this, is that someone's like, hey, what do you want your retention to be? I don't know. Or, and they look at you and you already know the conversation, right? So what we want to do is kind of give everyone a guideline of where we want to start. And then they can make their own determination. When they have a template, they're more willing to implement something versus not having something to start with.
Yeah, and what I also would like to do is, we've got a really good plan, right, for not only the retention, but what's your total cost of ownership based on your retention? And it really comes down to the amount of data you want to save. And, for instance, you might have, and it's really also organized around recoverability. So your production gigs per gigabyte of data might be $2 a gig.
And that's what CIOs actually care about. When you start putting numbers behind it and you put a strategy around those numbers, then you're starting to talk about, really finding out what the business actually needs. We need communication, and still, it's almost like Republicans and Democrats, they don't talk to each other, right? Well, it's like the CIOs and the IT guys a lot of times, and that's just what happens. And this is something that we don't mean to do it. It's just when you get really, really, really busy in your day-to-day work, you really don't have time for it. But sometimes you might need to step back and say, this is actually a good conversation that we should actually be having.
Yeah. Just
like the Equifax thing with the security standpoint. If she would have actually gone through and maybe talked to the IT more and really head through it, maybe they would have maybe found some issues, maybe not, but still at least you're having conversations. Every conversation you have in IT usually you'll always find something that you can probably do. If you aren't, you're probably not asking the right questions.
Right. Yeah. The thing about it is, Eddie, that I don't understand is why is your retention policy 30 days here and 60 days here and 7 years here? And inevitably the answer is, well, that's just the way we've always done it.
Yeah.
Like they have no clue. They don't know the purpose of why they're retaining what they're retaining.
Well, the thing is that think about it. The average IT person, I'm going to assume, is not. They're not at the same job for more than 7 years, and so when they come into that, there's already they always blame the previous, and it's like, hey, this is what we've been doing, and it's so almost impossible to get off of that, right?
Yeah,
and migrating from one to the other.
Right.
Getting off a backup solution is easier than getting off of an archive long-term retention solution, right? Because just try to rehydrate everything and re-indexing, nobody wants to do it, right?
For sure.
And so what we want to do is make sure that from a retention standpoint, the customers start designing, again, backups is for disaster recovery purposes only. And they need an architect for the 99%. Don't worry about the 100. Again, if you want that 100, then start doing a strategy for an archive solution.
So they need to figure out two different strategies. One, what's their archive solution? Two, what's their disaster recovery solution?
And we'd usually call that the data management or storage management strategy of how that actually is working together. Right? And there's a lot of solutions out there that can help you with that. And a lot of people, I mean, if you ever have questions and you're doing it, I mean, that's why we're here. Reach out to us. Get us on LinkedIn. Hey, what do you think about this? Don't be afraid to just ask us questions. Don't think you're going to be hurting our feelings, right?
Oh, no. I mean, here's what I would like to hear. I mean, if anybody has strategies they've used that didn't work, strategies they used that have worked, I would love to hear those conversations as well. And if you think we're full of shit, absolutely, I'd love to hear it. I mean, I live for that, where people says, Vince, you were absolutely wrong on this. It's like, I would love to hear that and have those conversations because I actually want to get it right.
Yeah.
I want to get it right.
Oh, yeah. I'd always say, if something's on your face and no one tells you, it's almost bad enough. I mean, just tell me, right?
Yeah,
tell me there's someone on my face. Let me wipe it off. Then we walk around the whole day. That's out for my wife. She never tells me anything. So
awesome. Well, man, so the net of this is IT has to be more involved in setting retention, from my perspective. Second thing, just because you have a archive solution, or actually, let me say it this way. Just because you have a long-term strategy for retaining data, that's not necessarily an archive solution. And B, and C.
Okay, I didn't know you were going to just throw something over to me.
All right, so we got really two things we're looking at. To summarize this conversation, one, IT needs to be more involved in setting the retention policies, and B, just because you have a long-term strategy for retaining data, that doesn't make it an archive solution.
No, it doesn't, because remember, archive is 100%. Disaster recovery, business continuity is more for the 99%.
And really the third thing is, as you mentioned, you've got to look at what the purpose of the backup or archive is. I mean, is the archive just to have it's not for recovery, it's just to have it. That's an archive. B, if you want to recover from it, that's a backup.
Yes.
Very good. So the purpose of the data is important, and make sure you understand that and the distinction between the archive and the backup. Man, I love this stuff.
I know. I think, again, we're only one of the few people that actually like doing this. I think we are.
Yeah.
We're probably the only last two on Earth.
Well, here's the deal, man. It really, when it comes down to me, is that we are actually saving jobs, lives, and money. I mean, absolutely. Why else be in this business unless you're out to save jobs, lives, and money? And we're doing that on a daily basis. Everyone who listens to this, that is in this industry, that's a system engineer, an administrator, you are absolutely saving jobs, maybe your own, lives, as well as money for your company.
You should be proud of that. That's something you should really be proud of.
Absolutely, absolutely. Very good, man. Well, listen, we had some good food, some good beer, and good conversation. You can't ask for more than that.
Nope, you can't.
Awesome.
And it's a beautiful day.
It is a gorgeous day. Very good. All right. Well, listen, thank you very much. As always, great job, Eddie.
You too, Vince.
And we'll talk to you soon.
This has been a Passage Digital presentation. Remember to back that shit up.
If you like this podcast, there are plenty of ways you can support it. First, you may friend us on LinkedIn. Our profile links are in the show notes, or you may share it on other forms of social media or discuss it on your own blog or podcast. Second, we view this as your show, so contact us and ask us for a question we can use, or simply let us know how you feel, good or bad, on how we can improve it. Third, rate us in the app stores and leave us reviews. If you hate us, feel free to 1-star that shit. But remember, 5 stars give you total consciousness on your deathbed, so you have that going for you, which is nice. And lastly, please visit us on the web at prosiliency.com, PROSILIENCY.com.